Hello, Haunted Family. Welcome back. Story 1. Phone Calls. My roommate and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with a shared living space. I had just laid down in bed to go to sleep for the night. My roommate was still up in the living room doing some schoolwork. It was almost midnight. As I'm laying there on my phone, I get a call from a number I don't recognize. I answer it, expecting a telemarketer. Hello? A kind of high-pitched male voice says, Hey! Hey, is this Stacy? I should have hung up at that point. Who is this? I said. It's me, Derek. Remember from high school? I was wondering if you wanted to talk. It's been forever. Now, I went to an extremely small, rural high school. We're talking less than 100 people in my graduating class. There was no one in my graduating class, or any of my classes, named Derek. I said, I don't know who you are. And as I hung up, I heard him say, Wait, Stacy, wait. But I hung up anyway. The fact that this person knew my name is really weird. I walked to the living room to tell my roommate what had just happened. As I'm telling her this, she pulls up her phone and asks, Hey, was this the number? She got a call from that same number at the same minute I did. But she didn't answer the phone. They left a voicemail. We listened to it. It sounded like someone breathing, or just moving loudly on the other end. And then distantly, at the end, it sounded like a group of people yelling, screaming. But it was so distant that we couldn't make out anything that they were actually saying. My roommate and I did go to the same high school. But we've changed phone numbers several times since we graduated. There shouldn't have been anyone, except for close friends, that had both of our numbers. The area code was from our home state, but really far from our hometown. And we didn't know anyone who lived there. Maybe I'm paranoid, but this really freaked us out. Story 2. Night shift. I worked night shift at a skilled nursing facility. I was told by the nurses that I would see some patients that appeared to be out of the ordinary, and not to be surprised. It was 1 a.m., and the hallway was empty. The lights were dimmed. My preceptor and I were getting pain medicines for one of my patients at a med cart. I was talking to her, and I looked down to an empty hallway. There I saw a young woman with a pink blanket draped over her. She was wearing shorts and socks. The face was visible, but she was so far away that I couldn't clearly see who it was. She ran so fast into one of the patient's rooms. I thought a CNA was slacking off. I asked my preceptor if she saw the young woman pass by. She said no, so I tried to go investigate. I went to the rooms I thought she had went to, and found them all to be empty. I went to another room, and a female patient was in there watching TV. I asked her if she had walked out into the hallway, and she looked at me and said, Honey, I can barely walk. I broke my hip. This puzzled me. I couldn't find where this woman had darted into. The other rooms around this area were all empty. I could have swore I had saw a young woman darting across the hallway. It was the only thing I spoke about all night. And then my coworkers told me that seeing things, especially at night, was normal, since they said that many patients had died there. The next day, I found out that a young woman who fit the description that I had died on that floor due to some complications. The room that I saw the person dart into was the room she had died in. Story 3. Hello again. My brother and I were home alone one night, watching TV. My mother was working a night shift, and our father was out. Our dad came home and pushed the door ajar. He poked his head in through the door and said hello. We both turned around and said hello back. He closed the door behind him. Not 30 seconds later, another man opened the door and said hello. We both turned around, said hello back, and the man closed the door. We assumed that it was a friend of our father's who came back to the house with him. About 5 minutes or so passed, and I headed to the kitchen where my father was. He was making dinner. I expected to see his friend with him, but he was alone, so I assumed his friend must be in the bathroom or something. I asked my dad who his friend was, and my dad said, "What friend?" I replied, "Oh, the guy who came back with you." My dad looks at me all weird, and he says, "There was nobody with me when I came home. I came back alone." This was the biggest what experience I've ever had. My brother was freaked out also. We remember the man in detail. He was pale with bright white hair. My parents say they don't even know someone who looks like that. Story 4. Haunted Town. I lived in this old house that had been converted into a duplex. In this town in Ohio that, by some accounts, might be the most haunted town in America. During the first year I lived in the apartment, I frequently noticed strange music that seemed to be coming from inside the house. It's hard to describe, but it sounded like a keyboard or an organ. It was really faint, and it was played in a minor key. It always sounded the same. I chalked it up to my downstairs neighbor, and it never bothered me enough to investigate further. I just knew it was definitely coming from inside our building. The following year, my original neighbors moved out, and my new neighbor, Sarah, moved in. We became fast friends. One night, she was hanging out in my apartment, and the music started up. She asked me pointedly where the music was coming from, and I said, "I don't really know." She didn't have music playing in her apartment? She said no, and we both looked at each other with an uneasy feeling. Sarah asked me if I ever saw or heard anything weird, and I said that other than the music, I'd had no other experiences. The way she asked implied that she had, but she wasn't ready to talk about it. A few months later, her boyfriend moved in, and she later confided in me that she had heard and saw things. Specifically, random tendrils of what looked like smoke swirling inside their bedroom, doors slamming or opening without explanation. Her boyfriend hated going to the basement so much that he would sing the whole time he was down there doing laundry. I hated the basement also. It was a creepy room that really hadn't been updated since the house had been built originally. I always felt like I was being watched down there. I graduated and was getting ready to move. I went out of town for a few days, so my parents were watching my cat at their place, just a few hours away. The night I got back to town, I decided to start packing some of my things, particularly my books. I fell asleep and woke up in the middle of the night to a giant crash. I was tired and disoriented. I assumed the noise had came from Sarah's place. The next morning, I went into my living room to find that a giant antique mirror that had been hanging over my fireplace had crashed and broken into 100 pieces. The nails that had been supporting the mirror were still in the wall. After that, I was finally prepared to admit that the place was haunted. I know Sarah saw and heard way more than she admitted. But she didn't want to talk about it because she still lived there. She moved recently, so maybe I'll reach out to her now and get more of the stories. I never really believed in ghosts, but too many unexplained things happened there. I never felt unsafe, or like whatever was in the house wanted to hurt me. I did some research on the previous owners. Apparently the original owner loved music. She actually founded the town's music appreciation group. And she died in the house of old age. So maybe what I was hearing was her playing her favorite song. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, don't forget to drop a comment down below, hit the like button, and subscribe. Bye! Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.